What does that say there?
Low battery. Battery, power, energy. Super. Daddy, I need a new battery.
Chappie, that battery's stuck. It's melted together. That battery can't come out. Now what you gonna do when that battery runs out, huh?
I die, Chappie, die.
Dion, he put you in a broken body.
Dion's my maker. It doesn't make any sense. He wouldn't make me just so I could die. Dion loves me, Daddy. Daddy told me about you, Dion. About how you made me in a body that will die.
What do you mean, Chappie?
Is it true that I will die in a few days, Dion? That this battery will die? Is it true, Dion?
Yeah.
But you're my maker. Why didn't you just make me so I could die?
I didn't make you so you could die, Chappie.
I want to live. I want to stay here with Mommy. I don't want to die.
You've become so much more than I could ever have imagined. How was I supposed to know that you would become you?
Okay, so Chappie got released on, I believe, home video or whatever you want to call it, electronic distribution, a couple days ago. And I had seen it in theaters, and I really, really enjoyed that movie, and it got incredibly negative reviews. Like, if you check around YouTube, everyone's giving it like a D or a failing grade, and they're basically saying the movie's a disaster. Now, I fully understand the problems that, mainstream audiences have with this film. I understand that the movie was marketed to be like a RoboCop action-adventure, and it was marketed like it was going to be fun, and the movie actually was not fun. Like, it was a very difficult movie to sit through, and most people would cite it was difficult to sit through because, the villains are cartoony, and their dialogue is bad, and Chappie's surrogate parents are horrible people that people don't want to be around. So I understand, the problems with the movie that people have, but then I also feel like there's some, unwritten set of movie rules that I am not a part of, and that I guess I missed that meeting where we all agreed that, movies had to have certain things. They had to follow certain rules. So some people would be like, oh, you can't have cartoon villains in movies. You can't do that. And I'm like, well, why? Darth Vader was a cartoon villain in Star Wars. And, depending on the movies, every different individual movie has its own set of rules, and that's how I view film. If a movie establishes cartoon villains as the norm, then I'm like, okay, in this movie it's the norm. I don't really question it, I tend to accept it. So, most complaints are in regards to, the cartooniness of the villains and their poor dialogue, and then also the unlikability of the characters that raise Chappie. The Die Antwoord group, or whatever they're called. People didn't like that, Chappie had a bad stepfather. Chappie's stepfather was verbally abusive and very selfish, and, you're just kind of watching Chappie get abused by his surrogate parents, and then you also watch him get abused by strange children, and then you also watch him get abused by the cartoon villain, and, the movie's not necessarily fun, but and so I feel like that's why people, are giving it, this failing grade, because they wanted a fun movie, and the trailer made it look like a fun movie, and it just wasn't fun. Now, that being said, some of my favorite movies of all time tend to not be fun movies. Children of Men is actually my favorite film of all time, and that is not a fun movie. It is not happy. It is not pleasant. But oftentimes when movies are about things that are difficult and harsh, we can really learn a lot from the lessons. So I feel like it was all right that Chappie pissed people off. Like, it was all right that people didn't like his surrogate parents. I feel like that was what the movie was trying to do. It was trying to make you cringe at watching bad parenting. And I feel like the movie succeeded on that level of, you know, being like, no, don't be a bad influence on him. Be a good influence on him. It was really frustrating to people. And then people also felt like, because those surrogate parents were bad parents, when they actually suffer at the end of the film, we're not supposed to feel bad for them. And while I understand that you're not supposed to feel bad for bad people, I still do feel bad for bad people, like, deep down. You know, like, if a bad person does lose the love of their life, or lose their dog, as an example, and they're, like, suffering and feeling bad, like, I have empathy for them. You know, I'm not saying I agree with these people, that I want to be them, or that I want to be their best friend, but yeah, I have empathy for suffering, you know? It really bothers me. So I feel like Chappie had essentially two main themes, and they were not the themes that the trailer pretended that they were. The trailer pretended like the themes were AI versus control and, you know, like technology and what the AI was going to mean to society. And that's how the trailer, you know, set the movie up. And really the movie was not about that. The movie was about parenting, child abuse, and mortality. So I feel like while one of the main themes of Chappie was the child abuse angle, I feel like the other main theme, as the intro of this video, you know, expresses, is that mortality is an incredibly huge theme in the movie, where, like, when Chappie learns about life and death, you know, it's very unfair, and it really bothers him, and he's very honest with no filter, much like all of us were when we were children. Like, when we were children, like, lots of things didn't make sense. And so you watch Chappie walk around where all of these things don't make sense to him. And yeah, it just takes me back to childhood in a really, really deep way. And, you know, the movie really spoke to me. Like, I felt like this movie was, you know, I hate to call it a masterpiece, because I know it has cartoon villains, you know, and I know that people hate it and say it's a train wreck, but, like, I really feel like, you know, it's one of the best movies I've seen in years. And, I still feel that way after months have gone by. I've seen some other movies that I very much enjoy, but I got Chappie on home video and, you know, watched it a couple days ago. And yeah, I was like, you know what, this is really good. I was kind of worried that maybe I just liked it too much, but after watching it months later, I was like, no, this is a really good movie. Like, I really like it, you know, it's really solid. And it's a shame that everyone is giving it a D grade or an F grade. And it does make me feel like, you know, I'm totally out of touch with mainstream America. Or that I'm like, they have some set of rules that I don't have, you know, when watching movies. Like, I'm okay with watching movies that are entirely about a cast of characters that are horrible pieces of shit. I'm okay with that. You know, if the movie's funny, or if the movie has something deep and meaningful, like, I can watch a movie with characters that I can't stand. Like, that's okay. You know, like, sometimes that's what the movie's trying to do. You know, and if it's okay if you don't like that, but to say it's like a D or an F, like, or a failure, that I don't understand. I might come across as hypocritical because I've bashed other movies, you know, for being terrible, but I always feel like, no, the movies that I bash for being terrible, they're inconsistent with their own set of rules. Like, the movie sets up some rules, and then it doesn't even follow its own rules, and that's when I really start, like, losing disbelief and getting upset. But, you know, if a movie sets up its rules and it's self-contained, I'll follow the rules, you know, for that one movie, case-by-case basis, individually. It doesn't affect me to see a movie, you know, with some negative things in it, or some violence in it, or some characters that are not necessarily characters you want to be or hang out with. You know, that doesn't faze me. But I do feel like Chappie said quite a bit on nature versus nurture, and quite a bit on the struggle with mortality, or even the struggle with God. You know, like, maybe I'm the only one that actually worries about death, because everyone else seems to be totally okay with it, but I have a real problem with death. It's what made me have a difficult time with God. I was raised religious, and, like, I have a really difficult time with God because of this whole death thing. And yeah, it really bothers me. And I feel like Chappie, it really bothered him too. And people were like, oh, they say everything out loud. Like, all the thematic elements are just slamming you over the head out loud. And yeah, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm totally okay with that. Because honestly, sometimes I need that. Like, sometimes I need reassurance that my fears are shared with other things, you know, for real. I don't want to feel like I'm the only one that's afraid of these concepts, or I'm the only one that's upset who feels like it's not fair. So on that level, I feel like Chappie was, one of the best films I've seen in years, and easily one of my favorite films of all time. Like, I'll just throw it on the top 10 list. And yeah, I know, the villains are horrible, and the dialogue when Sigourney Weaver is like, burn it to ash, yeah, it's terrible.
Destroy that robot.
Thank you, ma'am.
Burn it to ash.
Like, if you do a fan edit that out. Problem solved. But not liking the two surrogate parents, I can't help you with that. Like, I think that was the point of the movie, was that you were supposed to not like them. Because they were bad parents. But you know what? They had some likable qualities. Like, the lady really loved Chappie, and he felt loved. And, when the piece of shit surrogate stepdad loses her, he's upset and he's sad. And so is Chappie. And, you're like, they share that in common. And I thought it was fine, like, even though these characters were unlikable, I thought it was fine. Like, I thought the movie was totally hitting what it was trying to hit and accomplished what it was trying to accomplish. And, I understand why other people don't like it, but I do view it as kind of like, a slight modern masterpiece, where I'm like, it's pretty good. And yeah, it rips off RoboCop. I love RoboCop, but, people are like, it's just ripping off RoboCop, and I'm like, not really. Yeah, the Ed 209 thing, sort of, maybe, but I'm like, I've seen Ed 209 things and other things besides RoboCop and before RoboCop, but whatever. Whatever, that's childish, don't want to get into it. But Neil Blomkamp, I think you did an excellent job on Chappie, and keep up the excellent work. Don't let the critics keep you down. I'm sure in 10 to 20 years it will be a modern masterpiece, much like, how The Shining was received, or Citizen Kane, or, other movies that are just slightly ahead of their time. Or maybe poorly marketed, who knows. Fire your marketer.